Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? So it's kind of tough being a designer because everywhere I go, I just see bad design. We're surrounded by it, from airplane seats that distort our posture to aesthetically inelegant cars. This is the Fiat Multipla. It was awarded the dubious award of being the ugliest car by Car and Truck Driver magazine. Landscapes that were once green and blue are now paved over, and our surroundings are full of missed opportunities to introduce delight and joy into people's lives. Here's a building, for example, in Menlo Park that I drive by often, and to me it's a reminder of how you can't have no design. You can only have good design, intentional, thoughtful design, or careless design, because whatever design you end up with is your design. And poorly designed things slow us down and make us sad, like that ugly building in the neighborhood that makes you wince every time you go by it, or the TV remote control with too many buttons, or the software that just won't work. And these objects and experiences are outcomes of miscommunication, greed, lack of empathy, and lack of focus. And bad design is especially depressing given the price that's imposed on this planet. Sometimes it just feels like we're filling the world with junk. Now, as the internet industry matures, we have witnessed a greater interest and investment in design. So companies now embrace the notion that design can be a competitive advantage and that differentiates them from the competition. And our understanding of what design means has also deepened over the years, moving beyond aesthetics and towards problem-solving skills. And so for the last couple of decades in the software industry, we claim that a product is well-designed when a product is considered useful, usable, and desirable. But I posit that we can do better than that, and we need to do better than that. So what do I mean by this? And before I get too deep, I'd like to just give you some context by taking a step back and review for a moment the different levels at which design can be understood. So at the most basic level of understanding of design, it relates to aesthetics. So universal principles of beauty, such as the golden ratio, the rule of thirds, or principles of proximity, alignment, contrast, repetition, they all inform our innate sense of whether something is beautiful or not. And at this level of understanding of design, we think of design as the outward appearance of an object, such as whether a car looks fast or expensive or muscly. But design is not just about what an object looks like, but also how it works. So we consider an object well-designed not only when it's beautiful, but also when it's useful and easy to use. Good design makes our lives easier, it saves us time, and reduces cognitive load, which in turn reduces stress in our lives and preserves goodwill and willpower. And in this sense, good design is like a refrigerator. When it works, nobody notices or complains, but when it doesn't, it really stinks. Okay. Now, when a company consistently delivers an aesthetic and functional quality, design becomes the brand. It becomes the vehicle by which companies create an emotional connection to their customers. And consumers choose to associate themselves with certain brands because brands embody and represent values and ideals that appeal to them. Now, toward the late 1990s, successful design meant orchestrating memorable events for customers. And that memory itself became the product, the experience. So take American Girl dolls, for example. It's not just enough to buy the doll. Okay, in the experience economy, now you can design your own doll, customize her to look like you, give her a spa day, get her hair extensions. It's not just about buying a doll, but creating an entire experience around acquiring and owning this doll. And so design in this sense goes beyond the product and brand and encompasses the entire customer experience. Now, the term design thinking was popularized by IDEO and Stanford University over the last 10 years. And design thinking, not to be confused with design, refers to a set of cognitive processes directed towards problem solving. So different stages of the design thinking process includes defining the problem, building empathy for users, generating many ideas, prototyping possible solutions, gathering feedback, and iterating. And so with this understanding of design, design is about solving problems. So design is a term that refers to what something looks like, how it behaves, the emotions evoked when people interact with it, the experience that one has when one interacts with the service or offering, and a way of thinking and acting to solve problems. But it's also an expression and manifestation of the self. So what do I mean by the self? So a quick Google search on that term comes up with this definition: a person's essential being that distinguishes them from others, especially considered as the object of introspection or reflexive action. So if that's too esoteric for you, you might think of this as maybe one's personality or one's soul, for example, maybe their spirit. So any creative endeavor is an expression of the human spirit. When we create something, when we make something, whether it's a physical object, a service, a conference, something we write, we are creating an outward expression of who we are and the values and the virtues that we have internalized. What we make embodies our values and virtues and becomes a tangible expression of ourself. So take fashion design, for example. In the early 1900s, stylish clothes were complicated and very expensive. They were designed to portray women as delicate and passive and were highly impractical for anything other than to sit in the parlor and entertain guests in the drawing room. And the clothes signaled an aspiration. Not everybody could afford clothes like these. Well, Coco Chanel grew up poor, skinny, and orphaned during this era, but she believed that she was as good as the rich girls who spurned her in the orphanage. And with her spunk and flair, she grew up to be a confident, capable woman who was energetic, focused, and engaged with the world. And Chanel had a different vision of existence for women, and the clothes that she designed represented a different ideal from what fashionable clothes of the day were about. Her little black dress, which was introduced in 1926, embodied virtues that she valued within herself and reflect a woman who was energetic, competent, and engaged with the world, just like herself. And Chanel's clothes focused on quality and were not about following the latest trends. And sure enough, Chanel's designs have endured over decades and are still relevant now. Take a look at these products designed by Dieter Rams and his team for Braun. The products, like Rams himself, are humble, modest, and hardworking. And even though these products were created in the middle of the last century, these products have inspired the design of many of our beloved technology gadgets today, which is a testament to the endurance and the purity of Rams's vision. Being simple may make us feel vulnerable, but that simplicity is really an achievement. It follows from deep introspection about what really matters, a result of hard-won clarity and focus. These acts reflect virtues such as non-striving, non-attachment, and overcoming fear. Well-designed products, like their makers, are imbued with modesty. They don't try to attract your attention for no reason. They are happy to sit in the background and do the work. Now, many of us have seen the opposite of what this looks like. How many of you have been asked to save the design of a product when larger fundamental problems make your endeavors feel like you're just putting lipstick on a pig? So, for example, have you ever witnessed a company that was afraid to turn away easy revenue opportunities that didn't make sense for the product? That is an outcome of greed. Or how about the development team that keeps adding features just because they can? That is an outcome of attachment or striving. Or maybe the company that won't make the hard decision to kill a middling product just because they don't want to make current users angry. That is an outcome of fear. Fear, greed, attachment, those are just a few examples of afflictions of the self that can plague any company. They dilute the purity of the true intention behind what is being made. And for any organization or individual making a product or service, the clarity and the simplicity of the design depends crucially on their ability to confront these issues in order to better align with their intention. So the story of Steve Jobs returning to Apple in 1997 famously illustrates this point. When Jobs returned to Apple, he simplified the product offering by streamlining the product portfolio, cutting the product line from 350 products to just 10 products. He maintained that what really mattered was not what they did do, but what they didn't do. And instead of producing so many products, Jobs focused on a few machines that were meticulously perfected. Jobs had a clear intention, a commitment to quality over quantity. And many executives may make the same claim, but most are reluctant to actually make those tough choices. Consider how emotionally difficult it must be to cut products that have already been designed and manufactured and to kill jobs for like 3,000 employees. Jobs wasn't afraid of making a tough choice that would make him unpopular. He was willing to risk his popularity with others in the pursuit of upholding his vision, which he believed in the long run would save the business and serve their consumers and the business better. He transcended any feelings of greed, attachment, and fear that might have accompanied such a decision. Here's another example. When I was working at Udacity, we were the first massive online open courseware, bringing higher education to everyone. We had this ambition of offering high-quality tech education to people who wanted jobs in tech. And after the first few courses were published, everyone came out of the woodwork asking us about developing a course with them. So, for example, we started to develop a course with the University of Alberta on dinosaurs, or a partnership with San Jose State aimed to offer courses at more affordable prices to students. But it went against everything we stood for. We were focused on project-based learning, not teaching to the test. We didn't care about grades, but about what students made and put into their portfolios. And this partnership was a failure from day one. And all of our user research showed that it undermined our credibility. Sebastian Thrun, he's the founder of Udacity. I also worked with him at Google. He was the founder of Google's self-driving car efforts. Such a nice guy. Said yes to everything. Did not want to kill the partnerships. And with every conversation, I urged him, we need to kill this so that we can fulfill our intention. And he looked at me one day and said, I'm worried that if I kill these partnerships, I will lose all my friends. And then it just was so clear to me that that was really the job that I had to do. It wasn't about the pixels on the screen. It's about transcending this fear in order to kill the things that we needed to kill in order to move the company forward in the vision that we had, in the direction of the vision that we had. And now it's evaluated as a unicorn, and they're doing very well and fulfilling that intention. But when we are fearful, greedy, or attached, our actions get manifested in the design as complexity and clutter. The more we're able to transcend our beliefs about ourselves, the better we can create a great design and that clearly expresses our intention. What we create reflects our inner state. And as much as what we make embodies ourself, we pass on our attributes, our vision, and our intention to others when they consume what we make. So design is the culmination of intention, values, and principles manifested in tangible form and passed on to another. Design has the power to shape how others think and feel. So Adam Galinsky, he's a professor at Columbia University. He studied the impact that clothes have on how we think about ourselves and our performance. So participants in his study were given the Stroop test, where they're shown names of various colors printed in a different color from what they represent. And these participants are asked to name the color that they see. And this is a pretty tricky test because our natural tendency is to read the name of the color rather than the color that we perceive. But those in the study who wore white lab coats performed significantly better on this test than those who wore ordinary clothes. And what's also interesting is that this happened when the participants were told that they were wearing white lab coats. In another variation of this experiment, participants were told that they were wearing a painter's coat. Same coat, but in this case, they were told it was a painter's coat. And this time, they did not experience the same performance gains on the Stroop test. Why? Well, it's because they said that they were projecting a certain kind of image of the kind of person who would wear such a coat, like a creative artist who didn't care about accuracy and performance. Just really offensive. Anyway, so these participants were primed to project a certain image about the white garment by being told what it was, which in turn affected how they performed. But in regular everyday life, we're not usually told what the psychological properties are of the things that we use and make and wear. When something is designed with a clear intention, though, that intention is more effectively channeled through that creation and conveyed to the recipient of the design. So let's go back to Coco Chanel. In Chanel's little black dress, women could be efficient, organized, serious, and in control, yet while still being graceful and hip. And when a woman wears a Chanel dress, she embodies the virtues Chanel imbued in her designs whether or not she knows anything about who Coco Chanel was. Consider the Braun watch. On the surface, the watch looks like a very ordinary watch, but on a deeper level, it hints at psychological or even spiritual ideals of purity, simplicity, and harmony. The watch does more than tell us what time it is. It gently nudges us towards the ideals it conveys and represents. It makes us want to be on time. And you contrast this with the Casio G watch, okay, the G-Shock watch. This watch conveys a focus on durability, even under the duress of water and shock. The wearer of this watch is making a statement that says he is sporty, tough, and rugged. Or consider this watch. This is called the slow watch. The watch has a 24-hour face, as opposed to 12 hours. And the density of the numbers on this watch face means that it's utterly impossible to distinguish between 3:41 p.m. and 3:42 p.m. And the wearer of this watch clearly does not intend to have his day scheduled down to the minute, but rather to live in larger increments of time, like 15 minutes. And the slow founders assert on their website, slow is not a speed. It is a mindset that most of us somehow lost. Let's make time to bring slow back into our life. Be slow. The founders of slow value the slow life, and by wearing the watch that they designed, the wearer is able to live the slow life too. Now, we may not always be consciously aware or able to describe how objects make us feel, but we do sense a spirit or an energy that emanates from the objects that we use and the experiences that we engage with. So, for example, the Eames lounge chair by Charles and Ray Eames, designed in the mid-century, is sort of reminiscent of a bygone era. Its masculine structure offers a supportive man cave within the chair, beckoning the owner to sit, relax, and unwind after a busy day, maybe read the paper or watch TV until dinner's ready. And I will note that whoever's sitting in that chair is not the one responsible for making dinner. The Wishbone chair by Hans Wegner communicates a set of important values: straightforwardness, honesty, and elegance. It's sturdy without being hefty and heavy. It is humble and casual, but dignified. Its welcoming, unimposing design welcomes us to sit on it, and as we do, we become a little bit more like it. Now, various religions implicitly understand this relationship between design and the impact on the human spirit. From the ornate and ostentatious to the streamlined and simple, places of worship have been designed for centuries to evoke a certain set of virtues and ideals and maybe bring people a little bit closer to God. And whether you are religious or not, you cannot help but pause and appreciate the beauty of these places of worship and prayer, bringing you a little closer to serenity and equanimity. A well-designed object or space can bring out the best in us. Conversely, a poorly designed object can represent the worst sides of human nature: greed, insensitivity, the desire to prevail no matter what the cost. And as much as beauty promises goodness, ugliness evokes despair, suffering, and immorality. Ian Fleming, author of the James Bond series, implicitly understood this. One of his most notorious villains, Goldfinger, was named after a real person named Erno Goldfinger. Erno Goldfinger was an architect who was known for making giant, hulking, austere concrete buildings, which were characteristic of the brutalist architectural movement. And this architectural trend, popular in the 1950s and the 60s, was known for its use of cheap concrete building materials and became popular after World War II because it provided a sense of security in areas that had been bombed out during the war. Brutalism was also associated with a socialist utopian ideology which prevailed in European communist countries from the mid-60s to the late 80s. And the foreboding style kind of conjures images of totalitarianism, violence, force, and stark utility. The severe exteriors of these buildings appear unimaginative and bland, and to Fleming, the ugliness of brutalist architecture was personified as evil, embodied in this fictional evil character, Goldfinger. When positive ideals are manifested in objects and products that we use, those objects and products play sort of a positive psychological or spiritual role in our lives. Well-designed products are manifestations of mindfulness, virtues like patience, resilience, iteration, focus, empathy, non-attachment, all at play. And when we use these products regularly, They give us a chance to get closer to our better selves. When they are contained in physical things, psychological qualities that are otherwise often intermittent in our thoughts and conduct become more stable and constant. An inner evolution sort of takes place, which is why we form an emotional connection to well-designed things. Well-designed objects help us grow into our better selves and serve as ever-present reminders of what we could be. The ability for design to influence how we think and feel goes beyond physical objects and spaces and extends into ephemeral experiences like service design and digital product design. For example, with Google, Larry and Sergey aimed to build powerful technology that helps people find information efficiently. They invented algorithms that made it possible to find information easily, but it didn't just stop there. They committed billions of dollars of capital outlay towards creating infrastructure to make web search as fast as possible. They championed company objectives called OKRs, centered around reducing latency, which is the time that it takes to get search results back after somebody submits a query. They also did this by bringing to life a set of values around efficiency and scale through the streamlined interface. Everything done at Google was prioritized against creating a powerful, efficient tool. And by using Google to search the web or manage our email or photos or documents, we in turn feel powerful, efficient, and capable. Here's another example by a company called Nutanix, which I advise. They're an enterprise cloud company that makes data center infrastructure, and the leadership there champions virtues like empathy and frictionless, intentional, opinionated design throughout the company. Here's a few examples of how these virtues play out in the customer experience. Most customer support interfaces bury the ability to escalate cases because they're time-consuming and costly, but Nutanix puts this function at the very top, sending a message to its customer service representatives that no issue is too small, no customer is too unimportant to be escalated. Another example is with upgrades. Upgrades are typically complicated and risk-prone, especially when large clusters of machines need to be upgraded. And so understanding this challenge, the company reduced all of those activities into a single-click button, where the system administrator starts the process and Nutanix does the rest. So you can see from enthusiastic tweets how much their customers feel cared for. They can upgrade from their Tesla or perform upgrades while barbecuing. And what's stunning is that whereas this company started with a Net Promoter Score of 73 a couple of years ago, which is already pretty amazing, their Net Promoter Score is now a whopping 92. They were one of the hottest tech IPOs from last year, raising like $5 billion when they went public. In summary, what we make and consume is what we become, and what we become, so we make. There's this dialectic relationship that we have between making and consuming. We need good design in the world, not because we want to be extravagant or superfluous, and not to get people to buy more stuff, but because good design helps us be the best version of ourselves. And in order to make well-designed products, we need to transcend that which holds us back from making things great. Maybe it's fear or attachment or ego. The best thing that we can do to make well-designed products is to be willing to look at ourselves, our own patterns and habits, and really understand ourselves in a deep way. When we understand ourselves, we begin to better understand and embody the virtues that we want to express through the things that we're making. We become oriented towards wholesome action, and that gets expressed in what we design. And this, in turn, affects how others think and feel. It's the greatest gift that we can possibly give. Thank you.